Welcome back to our panel discussion, Government's Blueprint for Disaster Recovery in the Cloud, sponsored by Commvault and Amazon Web Services, here on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com. Our guests today are Brian Brockway, the Chief Technology Officer at Commvault, and Dan Kaysen, the Senior Manager of Worldwide Public Sector at Amazon Web Services. I'm your moderator, Tom Temin. And let's talk about something that's probably unthinkable, but we need to think about it anyway. And what if something goes wrong in the cloud provider?
Yep.
Dan?
So I'll start with that. It's the first thing I'll call out is the cloud itself, and we'll take Amazon Web Services specifically. It was built for resiliency. It was built for reliability. It's the fundamental architecture behind it, and it's the idea behind it, and one of the reasons why people go to it. You think about AWS, we have a global infrastructure. Right now, there are 13 geographic regions across the world. Each region has multiple availability zones with redundancy between them. So the idea of uptime and reliability is, we would like to think, greater than what's easily achievable in a premises-based environment, even achievable in a complex way. But that said, it's really important that we continue to work with our customers to make sure that they have reliability beyond just what that provides. So working with them to provide best practices over how you implement the solution, how you span regions and geographies, to make sure you have maximum uptime. You're leveraging the services that provide that redundancy for you and best practice in architecture. And then you're leveraging solutions that allow you to easily provide data redundancy or recover from downtime very quickly, like Commvault allows you to do. So the combination of those things together, one, can significantly reduce any issues that might happen and the impact of those issues to almost nothing, and provide any agency a really good path forward to make sure they have the maximum uptime for the constituents.
So that would mitigate against maybe a provider that says, we just put up our cloud. It's on Main Street, and that's the whole extent of it.
Well, I think it's not only that, but it's also the factor of, when you look at deep, well-funded, viable cloud providers like Amazon, your risk of a cloud provider going out of business overnight is mitigated away. I think to Dan's point, the cloud itself has, quite frankly, I think more reliability and resiliency than most customers that we've ever seen could build into their own data centers. So as an infrastructure resource, it's fantastic from that perspective. The other thing to factor inside there too is it's not only just hardware, stopping or having a power outage. One of the other disaster recovery scenarios in many cases is human error. So developers that inadvertently uploaded the wrong thing and they have to go back and roll back to last night's perspective. That's where some of the other features of the cloud come into play of snapshots and replication, and how do I take many of the capabilities that I use in the data center, and I now want to go off and I want to start to use those same capabilities inside the cloud. That's a lot of our new integration. So we've been coming in to say the capabilities that we designed for data center control, how do we go in and leverage the same thing in Amazon to give you the same level of comfort in this and enable you to de-risk your scenarios to say, how do I prevent my own people from making mistakes?
So if I'm the CIO or the CTO or I'm the network operations manager, whoever is charged with managing data center and the data facilities, what is my route to visibility into what's going on with my cloud providers? Because it's their company.
The route to visibility and how you manage all that. One, the cloud provider hopefully has a strong management console that allows you to get visibility for that.
So there's a pane of glass that lets me see what's going on there.
Yes, exactly. And that provides you capability to get that view. In addition, many cloud providers, AWS specifically, has full API access to just about any service that we provide. And that's given organizations capability to write their own single panes of glass and third parties to write very comprehensive management solutions that work with the AWS infrastructure, such as Commvault. So leveraging those providers, leveraging those solutions can give you that pane of glass.
Yeah, and I think to Dan's point, we're able to tie that back in. So back to the CIO, when he's looking there and saying, I need a dashboard to say, can I sleep comfortably tonight? What we're able to do is bring the perspective of both what's on-prem, what's in the hybrid cloud, and what's in the cloud environment, all to bear to say, do we have consistency across the board? Are you meeting your SLAs and BDM? And if problems are occurring, how can you identify it fast enough to go in and put corrective action to it before it turns into a disaster?
And can
or
you
some
have
other
that?
issue.
Can you have that level of visibility even in a multi-tenant situation where you can only see your stuff, but it could be on servers that are running
Absolutely.
5 people's things?
Absolutely. This is where I think back to one of the things we started talking about this morning around the notion of a strategic plan comes into play. So when you start to organize yourself and classify your environment, you put security zones and security tenant groups into play there. All of this rolls back together. Whether it's how do I use the technology, how do I put costing against it and usage, and how do I monitor it to ensure that I'm actually being efficient.
Yeah.
All right. So to wind up the discussion, let's get back to something fundamental, and that is the workloads. And earlier we talked about the planning for cloud and hybrid cloud, but we sort of didn't get to the question of how you determine what workloads, and a federal agency, a big one or department, might have hundreds of them. How do you decide which workloads need to stay in the data center and which ones can go to which types of clouds? What are some strategies there?
I'll start. There are some really good defined best practices that we use and we advise our partners and our customers to use as well that help organizations figure out what workloads are going to give them the biggest bang for the buck based on where they are. A lot of it has to do with determining what solutions are capable of moving into the cloud, and some may not be because of legacy infrastructure or compliance requirement that it's just not going to happen, to ones that are going to provide the fastest ROI and biggest learnings early on. We actually have something called a cloud transformation guide that helps bring people through this process to determine what those services, what those solutions might be. But that's coming up with an efficient process where you're prioritizing your solutions, determining the actual net impact to the organization, and also what's easily movable into the cloud or not. It's key to establishing that clear strategy for cloud migration.
Yes, absolutely. I don't think there's no magic bullet. So it does take some legwork to sit down with the organization and understand the workload, not just as an application and data set, but what's the security, what's the compliance. Do we have any data sovereignty rules? There are certain data sets that can only be located in certain locations and can't move from location 1 to location 2. Those are almost the new criteria you need to put as part of your strategy to then sit down and say, okay, now how can we really kind of navigate a path for the organization to say, how do we take maximum advantage? And it is definitely a journey. It's not a weekend event to turn over and become a fully enabled cloud data center on Monday morning inside there, but it's a progression. And I think that's back to the CIO strategy. This is something that we're seeing in a much more aggressive stance that's going to transpire over the next couple of years as more and more starts to shift and move.
All right, great advice. I want to thank today's guests as we close here. Dan Kaysen is Senior Manager of Worldwide Public Sector at Amazon Web Services, and Brian Brockway, Chief Technology Officer at Commvault. I'm Tom Temin, Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsradio.com and use the search words Commvault AWS.
On behalf of Commvault and Amazon Web Services, thank you for joining us. A link to the archive session will be sent to you shortly. If you've requested a training certificate, you'll also receive an email with the download instructions after the webinar. This concludes our discussion. Thank you.